I was standing in my tiny Brooklyn kitchen when my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Why was my apartment suddenly everywhere? Why were strangers laughing at my life? And why was my own stepsister the one filming it? Emily's voice echoed from the video. "This is how Layla lives. Cute, right?" The camera lingered on my bed barely 5 steps from the stove. Then a man stepped into frame, his tone sharp. "Why are you laughing at something you don't understand?" That question didn't sound like a joke. It sounded like a warning. "If you're watching this, tell me where you're from and what time it is where you are. And if you've ever had family cross a line like this, you'll understand why I didn't answer her call that night." By the time I got to the office the next morning, the video had already crossed a line I couldn't walk back. No one said anything at first. That was almost worse. People looked up when I walked in, then quickly looked down at their screens like they'd just been caught staring. A few smiles, tight, polite, unfamiliar, followed me past reception. It felt like I had become a headline overnight, except no one had bothered to ask me for the story behind it. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and forced myself to focus on the renovation proposal I'd been working on for 2 weeks. A micro-apartment conversion in Queens, exactly the kind of project people mocked until they needed it. My inbox loaded, 37 unread emails. I didn't panic. I scanned. A few were internal threads. 2 were from vendors. One was from a potential client, the one I had a call scheduled with at noon. The subject line read, "Rescheduling." I opened it. "Hi, Layla. I came across a video last night and realized your design style might not align with what we're looking for at this time. Best of luck." No explanation, no conversation. Just a decision made from a 30-second clip edited by someone who had never designed a space in her life. I closed the email and sat there for a second longer than I should have. Then I kept working. "Hey." Jasmine's voice was softer than usual as she leaned against the edge of my desk. She didn't look at me right away. That was how I knew she'd already seen it. "Morning," I said. "You okay, I will be?" She nodded like she didn't quite believe me but didn't want to push. After a pause, she added, "It's everywhere, Layla. TikTok, Instagram, even Reddit threads. People are debating what I asked already, knowing the answer, whether it's sad or inspiring." I let out a short breath that wasn't quite a laugh. "Right." Jasmine hesitated, then pulled her phone out. "There's something else." She showed me the video again. I didn't want to watch it, but I did. This time slower. This time like a designer reviewing a flawed blueprint. Emily's narration was still there, light-mocking, just enough sarcasm to feel playful on the surface. But underneath it, I noticed something I hadn't caught the night before. The cuts. She'd removed the part where I explained why I chose that apartment. She cut out the storage solutions I built into the walls. She skipped over the custom shelving I designed to make the space functional. Instead, she zoomed in on the bed, the stove, the smallness. She didn't show the system, just the surface. "That's not even the full video," I said quietly. Jasmine looked at me. "You sure I remember what I said?" She asked me why I liked it. I answered. "None of that is in here." Jasmine frowned. "So she edited it." "Yeah, not casually, intentionally." There was a difference. Before Jasmine could respond, my phone buzzed again. "Unknown number." I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. "Layla Thompson." "Hi, Ms. Thompson. This is Rebecca Carter from Hayes Development. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time." I sat up a little straighter without meaning to. "No, it's fine. I'll be direct. Mr. Hayes came across a video last night that featured your apartment specifically. He had a few questions about your design approach and asked me to reach out. I glanced at Jasmine, who was already watching me closely. What kind of questions, I asked. A few about space optimization mostly, how you approached constraints like square footage storage and livability. I leaned back in my chair, buying myself a second. This is about the video, I said. In part, Rebecca replied, but not in the way you might think. That didn't reassure me. I'm not interested in being part of a publicity cleanup, I said carefully. If this is about correcting optics or... It isn't, she cut in calm but firm. Mr. Hayes doesn't involve himself in social media narratives. He's interested in practical design. He believes constraints reveal skill. That wasn't what I expected. I looked down at the email that had just cost me a client, then back at Jasmine. What exactly are you asking? I said. We'd like to schedule a short meeting. Informal. Just a conversation. About my apartment. About how you think. There was a pause. I could feel the weight of it, how quickly things were shifting, how little control I had over the way my life was being interpreted by people who didn't know me. And yet, this felt different. Okay, I said finally. When I can send you a few options this afternoon, send them, I replied. We ended the call. Jasmine didn't wait. Hayes Development. I nodded. Her eyes widened slightly. Layla, if that's who I think it is? It is, I said. She let out a breath. Elliot Hayes doesn't just come across things. He notices them. I looked back at my screen at the paused frame of Emily smiling into the camera. For the first time since last night, I didn't feel embarrassed. I felt curious. Because if Elliot Hayes had really seen that video, then he had seen more than what Emily wanted people to see. And that meant one thing. Somewhere in that clip there was something she hadn't been able to edit out. I didn't tell my parents about the call, not yet. There are conversations you don't rush into, especially when you've spent years learning how quickly they can be turned against you. Instead, I met Rebecca Carter the next day at a quiet cafe 3 blocks from my office. It wasn't one of those trendy places people posted about. No marble counters, no neon signs. Just clean tables, steady lighting, and enough space between seats to have a real conversation. That felt intentional. Rebecca was already there when I arrived, sitting straight-backed, a tablet in front of her, a single cup of coffee untouched. Mid-40s, composed, observant. The kind of person who didn't waste time pretending to be casual. Ms. Thompson, she said as I approached. Layla is fine. She nodded once. Layla. No small talk. No compliments about my work. Just a quick gesture to the seat across from her. I sat. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she tapped her tablet, turned it toward me, and the video started playing again. Same clip, same cuts. Same version the internet had already decided was enough to judge me. But this time, Rebecca paused it halfway through. Can you walk me through what's missing? She asked. I didn't answer immediately. It was a simple question, but it wasn't casual. It meant she already knew something had been altered. She just wanted to see how I explained it. So, I didn't defend myself. I explained. She asked why I chose this apartment. I said, keeping my tone steady. The full answer was about control. I didn't have a large budget, so I designed around limitations. Every piece in that space serves more than one function. Rebecca watched me, not interrupting. The shelving behind the bed, I continued. That's not decorative. It's load-bearing storage. The drawers under the platform custom-built. Even the kitchen layout. I shifted the workflow so I wouldn't need extra space to move efficiently. I pointed at the frozen frame. She cut all of that. What's left is just the scale, not the system. Rebecca nodded slowly, like she was checking off something in her mind. And the tone she asked. I let out a quiet breath. She wanted it to feel playful, I said. But she leaned into contrast. Her audience expects a certain kind of lifestyle. This doesn't fit it. So she framed it as something to laugh at instead of something to understand. That's a deliberate narrative choice, Rebecca said. Yes. Not a mistake. Not an accident. A choice. Rebecca turned the tablet back toward herself and set it aside. Mr. Hayes watched this 3 times, she said. That made me pause. Why, I asked. Because of the part she couldn't control. I felt something tighten in my chest. What part Rebecca didn't answer right away. Instead, she leaned back slightly, studying me, the same way she had been since I sat down. You didn't react, she said. To what? To being filmed. To being mocked. You noticed the camera, but you didn't perform for it. You stayed consistent. I frowned a little. I didn't know what she was going to do with it. Exactly, Rebecca replied. Most people would have either shut down or tried to correct the narrative in the moment. You didn't do either. I thought back to that day. Emily walking through my apartment like it was a set, her voice too bright, too sharp around the edges. I had noticed something was off. I just hadn't realized how far she would take it. So what does that have to do with Mr. Hayes? I asked. Rebecca folded her hands on the table. He's currently evaluating a development project focused on small-scale urban living, not luxury micro-units designed to look good online. Functional spaces that people can actually live in long-term. That got my attention. He believes most designers approach small spaces like a compromise, she continued. He's looking for someone who doesn't. I held her gaze. And you think that's me? I think she said carefully that your apartment shows how you solve problems without pretending they aren't there. That wasn't praise. It was assessment. And for the first time since this started, I felt something shift. Not validation. Recognition. Still, I didn't let myself lean into it too quickly. And the video, I asked, where does that fit in Rebecca's expression, didn't change. It accelerated visibility, she said. But it's not why we're here. I studied her for a second longer. You're telling me a billionaire saw a viral video mocking me and decided to reach out because of what wasn't in it? Yes. That's a very specific kind of optimism. It's not optimism, Rebecca said. It's pattern recognition. That answer stayed with me longer than I expected, because it implied something uncomfortable, that everything Emily tried to reduce me to had failed. Not publicly, not yet, but in the one place that actually mattered. Rebecca reached into her bag and pulled out a slim folder, sliding it across the table toward me. Mr. Hayes would like to meet you, she said. I looked down at it but didn't touch it right away. Before I agree, I said I need to understand something. She nodded once. Go ahead. Does he know who filmed that video? A brief pause. Then, yes. And Rebecca held my gaze. There are existing business relationships connected to your family. Of course there were. Emily didn't just post things for attention. She positioned herself around people who could turn that attention into money. I exhaled slowly. So this isn't clean, I said. No, Rebecca replied. It isn't. Honest. I respected that. I finally picked up the folder, flipping it open just enough to see the header. Hayes Development Preliminary Consultation. My name typed underneath. Neat. Precise. Real. I'll meet him, I said. Rebecca nodded like she expected that answer. I'll have my assistant coordinate with your schedule, she said. We stood at the same time. No handshake. Just a mutual understanding that this wasn't a casual introduction. As I walked out of the cafe, the city felt different. Not bigger, just sharper. Because now I knew two things for certain. Emily hadn't just humiliated me, she had exposed something she didn't understand. And somewhere behind all of this, Elliot Hayes was already deciding what to do with it. Hayes' development didn't feel like an office. It felt like a statement. Glass steel silence, the kind of silence that made you aware of your own footsteps. The lobby alone was larger than my entire apartment, but what stood out wasn't the scale. It was the precision. Everything had a purpose. Nothing was there to impress you unless it also worked. I checked in at the front desk. No waiting, no confusion. My name was already on the list. "Mr. Hayes will see you now," the receptionist said, as if I'd been expected all along. Of course I had. The elevator ride was quiet. I used the reflection in the mirrored wall to steady myself. Neutral expression, shoulders back. No sign that my life had been turned into content less than 48 hours ago. When the doors opened, Rebecca was already there. "This way," she said. We walked down a hallway lined with models' miniature layouts of buildings, each one labeled annotated. I slowed just enough to glance at one. Compact units, modular walls, hidden storage. Not luxury. Function. He wasn't bluffing. Rebecca stopped at a glass door and knocked once before opening it. "Mr. Hayes," she said. Elliot Hayes looked exactly like someone who didn't need to prove anything. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. No exaggerated presence, no forced authority. He didn't stand when I entered, but he didn't ignore me either. He simply watched, measuring in a way that felt deliberate. "Ms. Thompson," he said. "Have a seat." I did. Rebecca closed the door behind her, leaving us alone. For a moment there was no conversation, just the quiet hum of the building and the awareness that every word from here on would matter. "You've had an interesting week," Hayes said. "That's one way to put it," I replied. A flicker of something almost approval crossed his face. "You didn't respond publicly," he noted. "No." Why, I leaned back slightly, giving myself a second to answer without rushing. "Because I didn't know what I'd be responding to," I said. "The video isn't accurate. Reacting to it as if it were would just reinforce the version she created." He nodded once. Most people would have defended themselves immediately. Most people aren't thinking about long-term consequences in the moment, and you were... I try to. Another pause. Not awkward. Evaluative. He stood then, walking over to a large screen on the wall. With a tap, the video appeared again. I didn't flinch this time. He played it without sound. "Tell me," he said, "what you see. Not what I felt. Not what I wanted to say. What I saw." I focused on the details. "The framing emphasizes constraint without context," I said. "She uses tight angles to exaggerate the size difference. Cuts out transitions that would show how the space functions." He didn't interrupt. "The pacing suggests discomfort," I continued. "But that's manufactured. The original conversation didn't have that tension." "And you?" he asked. "How are you presented passive?" I said. "Like I don't understand what's happening." "Do you?" I met his gaze. "No." That answer seemed to land. He paused the video on the moment he stepped into frame. "You recognize this part?" he asked. "Yes." What did you think when I asked her that question? I thought back to it. Not the words. The tone. It didn't sound like you were asking for entertainment, I said. It sounded like you were challenging her. Why? Because she wasn't evaluating the space. She was performing for an audience. And you weren't. No. He turned off the screen. Silence again. Then, your stepsister, he said, is currently involved in a branding partnership tied to one of our subsidiary firms. There it was. The connection. I figured, I said. She positioned herself as someone who understands lifestyle presentation. He continued. Influence. Market perception. I didn't respond. Last night he said several partners reached out asking whether her content reflects our standards. I felt my jaw tighten slightly. And I asked. I told them I was still gathering information. Measured, controlled. He wasn't reacting. He was deciding. What are you asking from me? I said. He walked back to his desk but didn't sit. I'm evaluating candidates for a development project, he said. Small-scale urban housing. Not as a trend. As infrastructure. He picked up a file mine and set it on the desk between us. You weren't on that list, he added. Honest again. I assumed as much. But you are now, he said. That shifted something. Not the opportunity, the timing. This is because of the video, I said. This is because of what the video revealed he corrected. A subtle difference, but a real one. And my stepsister, I asked. He didn't hesitate. Her situation is separate, he said, but not unrelated, meaning choices had consequences. I understood that language. If I move forward with this, I said, I don't want to be used to correct a narrative she created. You won't be, he replied. This isn't about optics. Then what is it about? He met my gaze directly. Consistency, he said. Under pressure. Under observation. Without control. I let that sit, because that was exactly what the past 48 hours had been. He slid the file slightly closer to me. Take it, he said. Review the project details. Think about whether you want to be part of it. And if I say no, then nothing changes, he said. Except I move on to the next candidate. No persuasion, no pressure. Just reality. I picked up the file. It was heavier than I expected. Before I decide, I said there's something you should know. He waited. The video isn't just misleading, I said. It's edited. His expression didn't change, but his attention sharpened. I can prove it, I added. A beat. Then I assumed as much, he said quietly. Of course he had. But assumptions aren't evidence, I said. No, he agreed. They're not. I held the file a little tighter. If I bring you that proof, I said, what happens next? That was the real question. Not about the project. About everything connected to it. Hayes didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at me the same way he had when I walked in, measuring not just what I said, but why I said it. And when he finally spoke, his voice was calm. Then we'll both have to decide, he said, what to do with it. That answer didn't feel like reassurance. It felt like a line I was about to cross. I didn't open the file until I got home. Not on the subway. Not at a cafe. Not anywhere public where my reaction could become another version of the story I didn't control. I waited until I was back in my apartment, the same space Emily had turned into a punchline, and sat at the small table I'd built myself, the one that folded out from the wall. Only then did I read. The project wasn't flashy. No luxury branding. No glass towers designed for magazine covers. It was something else entirely: modular housing units designed for long-term living in dense cities. Every square foot accounted for. Every decision tied to real constraints cost durability, accessibility. It was exactly what I had been doing, just at a scale I'd never been given access to. I closed the file and sat there for a while. Then my phone buzzed. Dinner. Tonight. 7 p.m. Don't be late. Dad. No explanation. No question. I stared at the message longer than I needed to. They already knew. Of course they did. News traveled fast when it could affect someone's reputation or their financial stability. I showed up anyway. The house hadn't changed. Same polished floors, same carefully arranged furniture, same feeling that everything was placed for appearance before comfort. Diane opened the door. Layla. She said, her smile just a little too controlled. Come in. No hug. That told me everything I needed to know. Emily was already in the living room, sitting with her legs crossed, phone in hand. She looked up when I walked in, her expression somewhere between annoyed and defensive. Hey, she said, like nothing had happened. Hi, I replied. Dad Robert came in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a towel. Good you're here, he said. Let's sit. We moved to the dining table. 4 seats, 4 people, no room to avoid eye contact. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Diane started. We need to talk about the video, she said, folding her hands together like this was a business meeting. That would make sense, I replied. Emily shifted slightly. Look, it wasn't supposed to blow up like that. I didn't respond. Diane continued. Emily creates content. This is part of her work. Sometimes things are exaggerated. Exaggerated, I repeated. Yes, for engagement. I looked at Emily. You filmed my apartment without asking. You knew I was recording, she shot back. I didn't know you were editing it into something else. She rolled her eyes slightly. That's how content works, Layla. There it was. Not denial, just justification. Dad stepped in. Let's not turn this into a fight. I kept my voice even. It already is. Diane leaned forward. What we're trying to say is this doesn't need to escalate. It's already starting to affect things outside the family. I didn't miss the wording. Outside the family. Like what I asked. A brief pause. Then Emily said it. Like partnerships. Of course. I nodded slowly. So this is about money. It's about reputation, Diane corrected. For whose silence? That was answer enough. Emily exhaled like she was running out of patience. Look, I can take the video down. I can post something else. But dragging this further, especially with people like Hayes involved, that's not going to help anyone. People like Hayes. So she knew. How do you know he's involved? I asked. Another pause. Too long this time. Diane stepped in quickly. We've heard things. It's a small circle. Meaning they were already worried. Not about me. About consequences. I leaned back in my chair. You edited the video, I said, looking directly at Emily. She didn't answer right away. That's normal, she said finally. Everyone edits. Not like that. It's the same thing. No, I said. It's not. The room shifted. Because now we weren't talking about embarrassment. We were talking about intent. Emily's expression hardened slightly. You're making this bigger than it is. And you made it smaller than it was, I replied. That landed. Dad sighed. Layla, what do you want here? A fair question. I thought about it. about the video, the call, the meeting, the file sitting in my apartment. I want the truth, I said. Diane's voice softened, almost rehearsed. Sometimes the truth doesn't need to be public to be resolved. There it was, the line, the boundary they wanted me to accept. Keep it quiet. Protect the family. Protect the image. I looked at Emily again. Why did you post it? I asked. She hesitated, not because she didn't have an answer, because she was deciding which version to give. Finally, she shrugged slightly. It performs, she said. Content like that gets attention. Brands notice. It leads to deals. Honest. More honest than anything else she'd said. At my expense, I said. She didn't deny it. Diane jumped in. Emily didn't mean to hurt you. She didn't need to mean it, I replied. She just needed to benefit from it. Another silence, heavier this time. Then Emily added quieter but sharper. You're not exactly struggling, Layla. You chose that apartment. I felt something settle inside me. Not anger, clarity. Yes, I said. I did. And I chose my career, she said. Then own how you built it. That was the first time she looked uncertain. Just for a second. Then she recovered. So what, you're going to try to take everything down because you're embarrassed? I held her gaze. No, I said. I'm going to correct what's false. Diane's tone changed immediately. Layla. I'm not done, I said, still calm. The room went quiet again. Whatever happens next, I continued, isn't about punishment. It's about accuracy. Dad rubbed his temples. This is getting out of hand. No, I said softly. It's just getting clear. Emily leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. You're overthinking this. Maybe. But I didn't think so, because overthinking didn't produce evidence. And I already had it. I stood. I'll let you know what I decide, I said. Decide what Diane asked. I paused at the edge of the table. Whether to keep this inside the family, or let it exist where it already lived in public. I'll let you know, I repeated. No explanation, no argument, just a boundary they weren't used to hearing from me. As I walked out, I could feel it, the shift. Not in them, in me, because for the first time this wasn't about fixing what they had done. It was about deciding what I was willing to carry, and what I was finally ready to put down. I didn't sleep much that night, not because I was overwhelmed, but because my mind wouldn't slow down. There's a difference. Overwhelm feels like noise. This felt like alignment. Pieces finally settling into place after being scattered for years. Around 2 a.m., I got up, made tea, and opened my laptop. If I was going to move forward, I needed to be precise. Not emotional, not reactive. Precise. I logged into my cloud storage first, the one I used to back up client files and personal projects. I didn't store anything casually. Not anymore. That habit came from working in spaces where one missing detail could cost you a contract. Or your credibility. I searched by date. The day Emily came over. There it was. A folder automatically created by my phone, June 14th. Video. I hadn't even remembered it was there. I opened it. 3 files, 1 short clip, 1 longer recording, and a third labeled IMG_4412.mov. I clicked the longest one first. The original footage loaded unedited, uncut. Emily walking into my apartment already holding her phone up like she was documenting something important. Her tone was lighter than in the viral version, still performative but less sharp. "Okay, so this is Layla's place," she said, panning slowly. In this version, I heard myself respond. "It's small, yeah," I said, "but it's designed for how I actually live." That line didn't exist in the version she posted. I kept watching. She asked questions. I answered. I explained why the bed was elevated, how the storage worked, how the kitchen layout reduced wasted movement. Every part of it was practical, intentional, gone from the edited clip. I scrubbed forward. Then I saw the moment, the one Hayes had paused in his office, Emily laughing lightly as she zoomed in on the space between the bed and the stove. "Don't you feel, cramped?" she asked. Before I could answer, someone knocked. The door opened. Elliot Hayes stepped in. In the original video, the shift was immediate. Not dramatic, not staged, just real. His expression changed as he took in the space not with judgment, but with focus. Then he looked at Emily. "Why are you laughing at something you don't understand?" he said. In the viral clip, that line was sharp, almost confrontational. Here it was measured, not anger, disapproval. I paused the video. There it was. Not just the missing context, the difference in tone. Emily hadn't just removed information, she had reshaped perception. I opened the second file, img_4 412.mov. It was shorter, a leftover clip probably from when she thought she'd stopped recording. Emily was still holding her phone, but it was lowered now. "I can work with this," she said. Someone else laughed faint off camera. Maybe a friend on speaker. Maybe someone in the hallway. "What do you mean?" the voice asked. "She doesn't even realize how it comes across," Emily replied. "People love this kind of contrast. It makes them feel better about their own lives." I felt something tighten in my chest. Not shock. Confirmation. She knew exactly what she was doing. I let the clip play out. No one's going to care about the design stuff she added. They just need a hook. Hook. That word stayed with me. Because that's all I had been to her. Not a person. Not a professional. A hook. I closed the file and sat back. For a moment, I didn't move. I just let the silence settle. Then my phone buzzed. "Jasmine." "You awake?" her text read. I called her instead. She picked up on the second ring. "Layla." "I have it," I said. A pause. "Have what proof?" I walked her through it, both files, the cuts, the audio, the off-camera conversation. Jasmine didn't interrupt. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. "That's not just editing. That's intent." "I know. So what are you going to do?" That question again. Except now it had weight. Options. Consequences. "I'm not posting anything I said." "Okay," she replied carefully. "Not yet, because this wasn't about winning an argument online. It was about control and timing." "And the contract Jasmine asked?" I opened the PDF Rebecca had sent me earlier that afternoon, the one tied to Emily's brand deal. I had skimmed it before. Now I read it properly. Clause 4.2. Content must accurately represent subject matter without deliberate misrepresentation. Clause 7.1. Unauthorized use of identifiable individuals without consent may result in immediate termination. Clear, simple, enforceable. She violated both. I said. Jasmine let out a quiet breath. So legally, she's exposed. And Hayes, I thought about that. about the way he had said it. Assumptions aren't evidence. He'll act if there's proof, I said. Not before. So you give it to him? Maybe. Silence on the line. Then, "You're not trying to destroy her," Jasmine said. It wasn't a question. "No," I replied, "because that would be easy and short-sighted. I just want the record corrected," I said. "What happens after that isn't mine to control." Jasmine was quiet for a second. "That's a dangerous line," she said. I know, but it was the only one that made sense. Because once truth is out, you don't get to decide how people use it. We ended the call shortly after. I sat there a while longer looking at the files, at the version the world had seen, and the version that actually existed. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I organized everything: original footage, edited clip, contract clauses, timeline of events. Clean, structured, verifiable. Not for social media. For accountability. By the time the sun started to rise, I had a single folder, one that could shift everything if I chose to open it. And for the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting to what Emily had done. I was deciding what it would mean. I didn't go to the office that morning. Instead, I took the train downtown and met David Kaplan at exactly 9:30 a.m. His office was on the 12th floor of a building that looked older than it should have for Manhattan's solid, practical, not trying to impress anyone. The kind of place where people came to solve problems, not talk about them. "Ms. Thompson," he said, standing as I walked in. "Layla is fine." He nodded, gesturing for me to sit. "I reviewed the summary you sent last night," he said, tapping a printed copy of my notes. "Let's go through this step by step. No small talk, no assumptions." I appreciated that. I slid my laptop across the table and opened the folder. "This is the original footage," I said, "and this is what was posted publicly." He watched both versions without interruption. Then he leaned back slightly, folding his hands. "She didn't just edit for length," he said. "She altered meaning." "Yes." "And she used your likeness without consent." "Yes." He nodded once, like he was confirming something he already expected. "Do you have any written or recorded permission that you gave her to film or distribute this?" "No." "Did she inform you the content would be monetized or used for brand partnerships?" "Num." "Did you receive any compensation?" I almost smiled at that one. "No." He made a short note. "All right," he said. "So we're looking at two primary issues: misrepresentation and unauthorized commercial use of your image." I stayed quiet, letting him lead. Now he continued in isolation. Either of those can be addressed. Together they create leverage. Leverage for what I asked. For correction, he said simply. Not revenge. Not punishment. Correction. That aligned with what I wanted. Her contract, I asked. He picked up the printed document I had included. "I reviewed this as well," he said. Clause 4.2 Accurate representation. Clause 7.1 Consent for identifiable individuals. She appears to be in violation of both. Which means the company she partnered with has grounds to terminate the agreement immediately," he said. "Potentially with financial penalties." I absorbed that, not because I wanted her to lose everything, but because now I understood the scale. "This would be public?" I asked. "Not necessarily," he said. "These things are often handled quietly, but the option for escalation exists." Of course it did. I looked down at my hands for a second, then back up. "And if I do nothing?" He didn't hesitate. "Then the current narrative remains," he said. "And your ability to challenge it diminishes over time." Because silence becomes acceptance. I knew that. He leaned forward slightly. Let me ask you something, he said. What outcome are you actually looking for? Not what I could get, what I wanted. That question mattered more. I want the record corrected, I said. He nodded. Then we structure everything around that, he replied. Not around maximizing damage. That was the first time since I walked in that I felt completely steady. Options, I asked. He raised one finger. Private resolution, he said. You present the evidence to the relevant parties, her partner's potentially Mr. Hayes' organization, and request a correction. Removal, retraction, acknowledgement. A second finger. Formal legal notice. Cease and desist followed by potential claims if not resolved. A third. Public disclosure. You release the original footage and let the audience decide. I already knew which one I wasn't choosing. I'm not posting it online, I said. He nodded, unsurprised. Then your strongest position is controlled disclosure, he said. You go to the parties who have something at stake. Hayes, I said. Yes. And her partners? Yes. I leaned back slightly, thinking. And my family, I asked. That was the part no contract could simplify. Kaplan paused for a moment before answering. They're not a legal category, he said. They're a personal one. Fair. If you proceed, he added, you need to be clear about your boundaries. Because once this starts, they will try to negotiate not just legally, but emotionally. I almost laughed. They already are. He allowed himself a small smile. Then you're ahead of the curve. We went over the details for another hour, how to present the evidence, what language to use, how to avoid statements that could be misinterpreted or escalated unnecessarily. Everything was structured, measured, deliberate. By the time I left, I had more than just proof. I had a plan. Outside, the city felt louder than it had the day before. Not chaotic, just active. Like everything was moving whether I chose to move with it or not. My phone buzzed as I stepped onto the sidewalk. Emily! I let it ring. Then a text came through. We need to talk. Now. I stared at it for a second. Not because I didn't know what she wanted. Because I did. She had felt the shift. People like Emily always did. I typed back. Not like this. 3 dots appeared immediately. Layla, don't do anything you'll regret. I read that twice. Not a question. Not an apology. A warning. I slipped my phone back into my bag without responding, because for the first time I wasn't reacting to her timing. I was choosing my own, and if she was already trying to stop me, then she knew exactly what I had. The invitation to the networking event came from Rebecca, short, precise, no unnecessary language. Mr. Hayes will be attending a private partner event this evening. If you're prepared to move forward, this would be an appropriate setting. I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I did. This wasn't just a meeting. It was a stage. And if I chose to step onto it, I wouldn't be able to control how people reacted. Only what I brought with me. I arrived just after 7 p.m. The venue was exactly what I expected. High ceilings, muted lighting, quiet conversations that carried weight even when spoken softly. People weren't here to impress each other. They were here because they already could. Emily was easy to find. She was standing near the center of the room mid-conversation, her posture relaxed in that practiced way she used when she knew people were watching. A glass in one hand, her phone in the other. She saw me almost immediately, and for a split second, just one, her expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. Then she smiled. "Layla," she said as I approached. "I didn't know you were invited." "I wasn't," I replied. "Not in the same way you were." A couple of people nearby shifted their attention toward us, sensing something in the tone. Emily let out a light laugh. "Well, it's good you came. We should talk." "We will," I said, "but not privately." That was the moment the air changed. Subtle, but real. "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice still controlled. "It means this doesn't get handled behind closed doors anymore." Her smile tightened. "Layla, this isn't the place." "It's exactly the place," I said, still calm, "because this is where the outcome matters." A few more people were listening now. Not openly, but enough. Emily lowered her voice. "You're making a scene." "No," I said. "I'm correcting one." That landed harder than anything else I'd said. Before she could respond, a voice behind us cut through the conversation. "Is there something we should be aware of Elliot Hayes?" He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The room adjusted around him without anyone acknowledging it. Emily turned immediately, relief flashing across her face. "Mr. Hayes," she said, "it's just a misunderstanding. Of course that was her angle. Reduce it. Contain it. Reframe it." I didn't interrupt. I waited. Hayes looked at her for a moment, then shifted his attention to me. "Ms. Thompson," he said. I nodded once. "I believe you mentioned you had something to present," he added. "Not a question. A door." I stepped forward slightly. "Yes," I said. Emily's posture changed instantly. "Layla, don't," she said under her breath. Not loud enough for others. "Just for me." I met her eyes for a second. Then I turned to Hayes. "This concerns the video that's been circulating," I said. "Specifically how it was created." He didn't react outwardly, but I could see the focus sharpen again. "Go on," he said. I took my tablet out of my bag and opened the folder. No hesitation now. "This is the original footage," I said, holding it so he could see. "And this is the version that was posted publicly." Emily stepped closer. "It's just editing." "It's selective editing," I said, not raising my voice. "With intent." I played the original clip first. No commentary, just the footage. My voice explaining the design, the full context, the parts that had been removed. Then I played the posted version. Shorter, sharper, distorted. The difference didn't need explanation. It spoke for itself. There was a shift in the room, not dramatic, but noticeable. People were paying attention now. Not to me, to the contrast. Emily crossed her arms slightly. "That's how content works," she said louder this time. "You highlight what people connect with." I didn't argue that. I just opened the second file. The one she didn't know I had. This was recorded right after I said. I pressed play. Her voice filled the space. "I can work with this. People love this kind of contrast. They just need a hook. No music, no edits, no protection." When the clip ended, the silence felt heavier than anything she had said all night. Emily's face had gone still. Not panicked. Calculating. "That doesn't show the full context," she said quickly. "I was talking about audience engagement using me," I replied. Her jaw tightened. "That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you said." Diane wasn't here to soften it. Robert wasn't here to redirect it. This was just her, and the choices she had made. Hayes stepped forward slightly, his attention still on the screen. "Is there anything else we should review?" he asked. "Professional? Detached?" I shook my head. That's the full set of relevant footage I said. He nodded once. Then he turned to Emily. Your contract requires accurate representation, he said. And consent. Emily's voice sharpened. I didn't think this would be interpreted that way. That's not the standard, he said calmly. The standard is what you did. A pause. Then, your current agreement is under review, he added. Effective immediately. There it was. Not loud, not dramatic. Final. Emily's composure cracked for the first time. You're making a decision based on evidence, he said. Simple. Clear. Unarguable. She looked at me then. Not angry. Not yet. Something closer to disbelief. Like she hadn't expected me to follow through. Like she thought I would stop at the edge. I held her gaze. Not to win. Just to be clear. This wasn't about destroying her. It was about not carrying what she had created. Hayes turned back to me. Thank you, he said. Not for the exposure. For the precision. For bringing something complete. And in that moment I realized something. The power shift had already happened. Not when I walked into the room, not when I pressed play, but when I decided I wasn't going to argue with her version of the story, I was going to replace it. The room didn't return to normal after that. It didn't erupt either. No one raised their voice. No one made a scene. But conversations shifted subtle, deliberate, like people adjusting their positions without announcing it. That's how decisions are made in rooms like that. Quietly. Permanently. Emily didn't follow me when I stepped away. She stayed where she was speaking to someone I didn't recognize, her posture still composed but tighter now, less fluid. Like she was holding something together instead of controlling it. I didn't watch long enough to see it fall apart. Layla. I turned. Diane. I hadn't seen her arrive. Of course she would come. She always did, just not at the beginning of things. Can we talk? She asked, her voice low. I considered saying no, but I didn't. We stepped into a quieter corner just outside the main room. Not private, but far enough that we wouldn't be overheard easily. You shouldn't have done that here, she said. No greeting, no acknowledgement, just correction. I didn't choose the setting, I replied. I chose the timing. She exhaled slowly like she was trying to stay calm. You blindsided her. I responded to what she made public. That's not the same thing. No, I said. It's not. A pause. Then she shifted. You've made your point, she said. This doesn't need to go any further. There it was again. Containment. I looked at her. What does further mean to you? I asked. She hesitated just for a second. Legal action, public statements, escalation, she said. None of that helps anyone. It helps accuracy, I replied. It creates damage, she countered. To who? Her expression tightened. You know the answer to that. I did, but I wanted her to say it. To the family, she added finally. I nodded slowly. Emily made that decision, I said. She didn't understand the consequences. She understood the benefits. Diane's voice sharpened slightly. She's young. She's strategic, I replied. That stopped her, because she couldn't deny it, not after what I had shown. We stood there for a moment, neither of us speaking. Then she tried something different. A softer tone. Layla, we can fix this, she said. Privately. She can issue a correction, take the video down. We can handle it. We, I asked. She didn't answer directly. You don't need to involve outside parties, she continued, especially not Hayes. That was the real concern, not the truth, the exposure. He's already involved, I said, because you brought him in. No, I replied, because she did. Another pause. Longer this time. Then, what do you want? Diane asked, not rhetorically, not strategically, genuinely. And for the first time, I answered without filtering it. I want to stop being used, I said. Her expression shifted slightly. I want my work to speak for itself, I continued, not through someone else's version of it. That's fair, she said quickly. But this isn't just about fairness, I added. It's about boundaries. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't fully accept that. Boundaries don't have to be permanent, she said. That almost made me smile. They do, when they're ignored repeatedly, I replied. That landed, because this wasn't just about the video. This was a pattern, and she knew it. She's your sister, Diane said. No, I said calmly. She's your daughter. The distinction hung in the air, clear, uncomfortable. True. Diane looked away for a moment, then back at me. This will affect more than just her, she said. There are relationships tied to this. Business connections, opportunities. I know, and you're okay with that. I thought about it. About the meeting with Hayes. About the contract. About the years of being expected to adjust to stay quiet, to not disrupt anything that benefited someone else. Yes, I said, because the alternative was continuing to carry something that wasn't mine. Diane studied me for a long second. Then she sighed. You've changed, she said. I didn't argue that. I've clarified, I replied. That was closer to the truth. My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from an unknown number. I opened it. Ms. Thompson, this is Hayes's office. Mr. Hayes would like a few minutes of your time before you leave. I looked back at Diane. I have to go, I said. She nodded, but there was something unresolved in her expression. This isn't over, she said. No, I agreed. It's not. But it wasn't unclear anymore either. I walked back into the main room. Emily was gone. Not physically, I could still see her across the space, but removed from the center of attention she had built for herself. That shift. It wasn't loud, but it was real. Rebecca met me halfway. He's in the conference room, she said. I followed her. Same hallway, same controlled environment. But this time it felt different. Not intimidating, just direct. Hayes was already inside. He didn't stand when I entered. Didn't need to. Ms. Thompson, he said. Thank you for handling that the way you did. I presented the facts. I replied. Yes, he said. You did. He gestured to the chair across from him. I sat. No delay this time. No uncertainty. Her contract is being reviewed, he said. That process will proceed independently. I nodded. I'm not here about that, I said. I know, he replied. A small pause. Then, the project, he said. Have you made a decision? I thought about the file, about what it represented. Opportunity, scale, responsibility, and something else. Independence. Yes, I said. And he asked. I'm interested, I replied, but not under the same conditions she operated under. He watched me closely. Clarify, he said. No misrepresentation, I said. no using my work for narrative before it exists, and no expectation that I manage external relationships that aren't part of the design itself. Simple, clear. Boundaries. He didn't respond immediately. Then he nodded. That aligns with the project, he said. Good, because if it didn't, I would have walked away. I'll have Rebecca send over the formal terms, he added. I stood, not rushed, just ready. As I reached the door, he spoke again. One more thing, he said. I turned. You didn't escalate, he said. You corrected. I held his gaze. There's a difference, I replied. He nodded once. Yes, he said. There is. I left the room without looking back, because for the first time I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking towards something I had chosen. 3 months later, my apartment looked the same. Same walls, same compact layout, same table that folded out when I needed it. But everything about how I lived in it felt different. Not because it had changed, because I had. The project with Hayes Development didn't turn into a headline. There was no press release with my name in bold, no viral announcement correcting what had been said about me. And that was exactly how I wanted it. The work spoke quietly. Blueprints became prototypes. Prototypes became units. And for the first time in my career, I wasn't designing around someone else's expectations of what small spaces should feel like. I was designing for how people actually lived in them. Jasmine visited one of the early units with me a few weeks before the official rollout. She walked through it slowly, running her hand along one of the modular walls I had helped design. This is you, she said, not as a compliment. As a recognition. It's what I've been trying to do, I replied. Yeah, she said, but now people can see it. That was the difference. Not exposure. Clarity. I didn't hear from Emily for weeks after the event. Not directly, but I didn't need to. The video was gone. Her account shifted tone, less commentary, more neutral content. Safer. Controlled. The kind of adjustment people make when they realize the line they crossed actually exists. Jasmine kept an eye on it longer than I did. Her partnership got pulled, she told me one afternoon. Quietly. I nodded. That made sense. Consequences don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they just remove access. The first message from Emily came a month later. I'd like to talk. Not about work, just talk. I read it once, then again, then I put my phone down. Not because I didn't care, because I did. But caring didn't mean responding immediately, or at all. 2 days later, she sent another message. I know I handled things wrong. I didn't think about how it would affect you. I just saw an opportunity. That part at least was honest. I replied that night. Thank you for saying that. Nothing more. No invitation. No reopening. Just acknowledgement. She didn't push after that, and I respected her for it. My father called once. Short conversation. Careful tone. You've been busy, he said. Yes, we've been hearing good things. I paused. About the project, I asked. Yes. I waited. Then, we're proud of you, he added. I let that sit. Not because I didn't appreciate it, but because I needed to understand what it meant now. Thank you, I said. No follow-up. No attempt to rebuild something that hadn't been stable to begin with. That was the boundary. Clear, simple, necessary. Diane never reached out directly. But I heard from someone else that she had mentioned me at a small gathering. She's doing well, she had said. Not dismissive, not minimizing, just factual. That was enough. One afternoon, as I was leaving a project site, Rebecca handed me a finalized set of documents. Official approval, she said. Phase 2 moves forward next quarter. I took them. Thank you, I said. She studied me for a moment. You handled everything with precision, she added. Not everyone would have. I didn't want to lose control of the situation, I said. You didn't, she replied. You redefined it. That stayed with me because that's what it felt like. Not a victory, not a comeback, a redefinition of what I allowed, of what I responded to, of what I carried. That night I went back to my apartment. I opened the same folder that had started everything. The original footage, the edited version, the clips she didn't know I had. I didn't need them anymore. Not for proof, not for leverage, just as a reminder. I closed the folder and archived it. Not deleted, archived. Because the past doesn't disappear. It just stops having access. I made tea, sat at my table, looked around the space that had once been turned into a joke, and realized something I hadn't expected. Nothing about it felt small anymore. There's a difference between revenge and boundaries. Revenge tries to take something back. Boundaries decide what you're no longer willing to give. For a long time, I thought staying quiet was the same as keeping peace. It wasn't. It was just making space for other people to define me in ways that benefited them. What happened with Emily didn't start with that video. It started years earlier with small moments I ignored, lines I didn't draw, assumptions I let go unchallenged. The video just made it visible. If you've ever had someone use your story, your work, or your vulnerability as a tool for their own gain, you probably understand how complicated it feels to respond, especially when that person is family. But here's what I learned. You don't need to destroy someone to stop being used by them. You don't need to prove everything publicly to know what's true. And forgiveness doesn't mean restoring access. It just means you're no longer carrying the weight of what happened. If any part of this resonates with you, I'd genuinely like to hear your perspective. Where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Stories like this don't happen in isolation, and sometimes sharing your experience helps someone else draw a line they've been avoiding. And if you want to hear more stories like this about boundaries, choices, and what it takes to take your life back in quiet ways, you're welcome to stay. This is a fictional story created for entertainment, education, and reflection.